Hi and welcome to this video in the QPSMR Going Deeper series, and in this video we're going to be looking at preparing your questionnaires, how you can edit them, copy and paste entries, and even some tricks that show you how you can set up your questionnaire a bit more quickly and make changes. So we're going to go through half a dozen examples. All of these apply to QPSMR Insight. So let's just look at one or two of the things we're going to do. Now the first challenge I'm going to set here is I want to have a copy of question 3 which has the same responses. So if I click on question 3 you can see that it's got 6 responses here. Well, I want the same responses for question 3, another question after question 3, which asks which of these magazines do you never read. So I'm just going to quickly rename this one as 3A. So let's pick 3, rename it as 3A and click OK. So that's done that. Save it. Now I'm going to take a copy of this question and call it 3B, copy and paste. It asks me for the U name for the entry. I'm going to call it 3B. I want to copy it back as another question, so same as the original. I don't want to copy it as a variable. That would mean that it's not a question on my questionnaire, it's just a straight copy in a variable that perhaps I want to manipulate for tabulation, so that's fine. I can have it after a particular entry or at the top or the bottom, and there's a drop down here to choose the question. Well, it's actually picked it correctly for me that I want it after Q3A. So there it is now, there's my question, and I can now quickly edit it and say which magazines do you never read, and the responses will be the same. And I might want to tighten this up so that I only have magazines that are not in the previous question. So I could apply a response filter here which said I wanted Q3A, and I wanted to filter it on not and that means that I've now only got brands or makes or magazines in this case that are not present at Q3A. So that was a good shortcut for that. Now the next thing I want to show you is how you can renumber your questionnaire, and the renumber feature is quite intelligent in that it will renumber everything that's got a number in it for you. So it can't renumber gender and age down the bottom here, but it will do 3A and 3B correctly. So let's imagine we're going to put a new question in here before question 3A, project, insert an entry. I'm going to put a question in that maybe I've forgotten, and I'm going to call this question 99, we'll call it. And there's a reason for that, because I want to give it a number which is not between 1 and 9, because their number's already used. I'm just going to call it 99 to keep it out of the way. And do you own a bicycle that is by all the family? So as a question, I'm going to put the responses in here as yes, no, and save that as a question. And now I've got a question 99 in here in the middle of my questionnaire. And there's a good reason for that. It means now that when I renumber my questionnaire, 99 will become 3, 3A will become 4A, and 3B will become 4B, and so on, so that everything is updated. And indeed, if I had any filters, they would also get updated, and indeed this filter here of not Q3 will become Q, not Q4A. So let's save it. You have to save before you do this. Let's renumber my questionnaire. I'm going to click on the automatic renumber, and you can see here it's already told me what it's going to call everything, and everything's going to get renumbered just as I want it. I could edit that if I wanted to, but I'm going to say OK. And now you can see that everything's been renumbered, bringing in a new question 3, moving everything down, and changing that filter to Q4A automatically for me, and leaving gender and age as the same thing. So that was a good way of adding a question in the middle, giving it a number like 99 or 999, so that when you renumber, everything will go back to being in sequential order. Now the next thing we're going to look at is outputting text. so that you can edit the text outside of QPS itself. So let's do that, and let's look at how we do that. So I'm going to Project, and there's an option down the bottom here on the Project menu called Output Entry to Text File. So I'm going to click OK to that, and I'm going to choose text.csv, which is a file I've got already. I'm just going to overwrite it. And if we now go into the folder in which you're working, you'll see I've got a file now which is a CSV file, which is a list of all of the entries, a notation here to say whether it's a question and the codes, and then the text. A very easy file to follow. And now what I can do, I can edit this file. So if I had a spelling error, for example, or I wanted someone to proofread it, this is a very good way of doing it, or indeed translate it into a foreign language. That would be a possibility. But let's say that on two wheels I didn't want to have as a two, it should be as a TOW, so I'm going to edit that. I could use find and replace here in Excel, of course, and I can just copy that down here. There might be hundreds of occurrences of this. So there we are. I can change as much as I like in here. Now I can save this and close it. Go back to QPS, and now I can update from that CSV file. So I could say update entry from CSV, choose the texts, update it. It's just told me now that Q4A and B have been updated with those textual changes. And indeed, if I save this now and look at Q4A, you'll see that the response text now says on two wheels with the word TWO rather than the number 2. So that's a good way of changing text, or just looking at them to see if there's any errors or spelling. And of course you can put that through spell checkers and things like that. You could just save that as a text file, put it through a spell checker, all sorts of things you can do having got all of your texts into that CSV file. Now the other thing you might want to do is to copy or paste in a list of brands or something like that. So let's say we've got a list of brands sitting in a workbook called Brands. This is not the most exciting list you'll ever see, but here I've got 50 brands. They're called brand 1 to brand 50, but of course they could be some other name. Now what I can do in my QDF in QPS, I could, let's say we want a question in here, question 11. I could say that question 11 and which brand do you use? And what I can do here, I could allocate 50 responses here. So now I click OK and save it, and I'll have that question in the questionnaire with 50 blank responses. Output it again to a text file, place it again, and now if I go to my text file for question 11, let's go down there to question 11, here it is, you can see I've got 50 blank responses, which means now I can just go to my brands.xls file, grab those 50 brands, go back to my CSV file, paste them in and save them. And so very quickly I've got a brand list in that's come from a different source. Go back to QPS, update entries from that CSV file, and it's listed out the 50 brands that it's found. And indeed, if we go in there now, you'll see that my responses now are not just blank. There they are, brands 1 to 50. And there's nothing to stop you, by the way, in this one of these CSV files. If we just reopen it quickly, you can just load up one question from here. So although I've got all the questions in here, I could, for example, just take question, let's delete all of these rows here. I could say this is yes, indeed, no, it's not. So I could just update question 1, if I save this, and it would just update the questions in this list. So now I've got my QDF ready, I can just say project update from CSV file, picks that again, it just has Q1 in there, and sure enough now if I save that in Q1, I look at my responses and there's my two responses, yes indeed and no it is not. So that's sort of some things that you can do to prepare your questionnaire a little bit more quickly by using external files to load things in and so on. There's some nice tricks there for setting up your questionnaire very quickly. So finally now let's have a look at the QDF itself and see what we can edit in there. Now I should stress this has to be done with extreme care, because if you damage your QDF you're likely to use any questions that refer to those questions and so on. So this needs to be done with great care. Now if you're going to go into your QDF and edit it in an editor, you really should take a copy of it before you start. Anything you do within QPS when you save and make deletions and so on, every time you save you're getting a backup of your questionnaire, so you're reasonably safe and can always go back to a previous version if you have made an error or you've perhaps updated some text incorrectly. So I'm going to take a copy of this before I start. I'm just going to paste it back so I've got a copy. And now I'm going to open up this in, let's use Notepad here, that most people have access to. And you can see in here I've got the text yes indeed and no it isn't. Let's set it back here to yes and no. Now you'll see what I've got in this file here is a whole lot of control stuff at the top. Now you really shouldn't change those unless you know what you're doing. And then you'll see each of the questions beginning. QB means question begin, Q means question end, filter begin, filter end, and so on. You can edit these texts, but you must do so with great care. For example, all these spaces here are significant. So if we lost a space in between that Q and the E, QPS wouldn't understand that question anymore and you'd start to lose parts of your questionnaire. But it means you can find and replace and use editors to correct things. So if I want to set this back to yes and no, I can do just that. So there we go. Whoops, just taking that too many characters. I can just file and save that and quit. And now if I reopen the questionnaire, probably should close it now, but reopen it, we should find that question 1 now has the responses just yes and no with those extra bit of text, yes indeed, removed. So that's a sort of back way into your QDF, but really do that with great care. And it really is worth understanding what all the syntax means and each of the codes in that QDF, what they really mean. Otherwise, you can get yourself in trouble. And I think it's a good idea to take a copy of the file before you start. So there is some syntax in here that you have to learn about, the length of the variable and the lengths of questions, the names, how they're stored in square brackets in the titles. All this works to a fixed syntax that you must honour entirely if you're going to use that. Well, that ends this video on some tricks for editing questions, copying and pasting, and actually getting into the QDF. And it's actually a key if you wanted to write any software that made a QDF from another source, that would be another tool that you could use. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. There's plenty of other videos in these series to help you work with QPS MR Insight.